Wir widmen uns jetzt ein bisschen mehr dem Zusammentreffen von Mensch und künstlicher Intelligenz. Und zwar, wenn es darum geht, welche Rolle AI bei automatisiertem Social Engineering spielt, beziehungsweise spielen kann. Und welches Potenzial da schon drinnen steckt bei völlig personalisierten und überzeugenden Angriffen. Und darüber werden wir jetzt mehr erfahren im nächsten Vortrag. Dafür begrüßen wir hier auf der Bühne Alexander Hurbean und Wolfgang Ettlinger von Certitude Consulting.
Thank you. Hello. A warm welcome from my side to our talk, Skynet Wants Your Passwords. A little bit more about ourselves. My name is Alexander Hurbean, and I'm a security consultant working at Certitude Consulting. And my colleague?
My name is Wolfgang Ettlinger. I'm a director at Certitude Consulting. Yeah.
That's about it. Thank you. So let's get right into it. Basically, the first talking point that we would like to present is that AI is your friend, but not really. It's a double-sided blade as anything else, for example, a compiler with which you could, for example, write malicious software. But the big thing about AI, what doors it now opens, is for social engineering to basically automate a lot of the tasks which did require human work. So basically, for example, if you were to want to fake a voice, you would need somebody who is a voice actor. So you would need a person to come in, learn the voice, and also be fitting for that role, and then they could imitate a voice of somebody else for a social engineering attack. This now can be not only done with AI, but also massively scaled, because it's the computer doing it. If you have one computer running some software, you could have 1,000 computers running the same software. Let's look at this, because I told you about voice cloning. These are some scenarios coming up where we show you how we could use this voice cloning technology, which is possible now, to do some social engineering. And always keep in mind that we could scale this up to automate it further. The first one is not so automatic. It still has some human elements, but is still something that is happening. So first, we have the attacker on the left side, and the attacker has already had a copy of somebody's voice, for example, let's say the son of some parent, and they have this model displayed by this digital brain, and he wants to scam the parent out of the money. What they would do, they would, for example, say, okay, call the parent and we have an already done recording in the voice of the son. Hey, I've been in a car crash, please, the police is here. They told me that I need to pay up. You have to talk to them. And that's it. There's no interaction. The parent just gets the call. They basically get told in the the son's voice, please, I need some money. You need to send it. You need to talk to the policeman. Okay, and then in the next step, like, the parent doesn't get to talk. They just immediately get redirected to some call center, for example, and they are posing as some sort of authoritative position, for example, a police officer. And in the end, the attacker gets the money if then they are convinced of this whole situation, which is enhanced by artificial intelligence. In this case, the attacker could just go out. If you talk about how we would scale this attack, the attacker could go out and start cloning voices and calling people. And the actual scamming happens in this call center part. As another scenario, we would have an attacker not create a clone to just basically have some playback of some sort of recording, some text, some scenario they have thought of, but they would clone the voice, for example, let's say of a CEO, and then they would call, for example, the financial department. At the financial department, they'd say, hey, I need this signed, I'm the CEO, whatever, something like this to convince them with the CEO's voice to basically sign the document or sign some transaction or do some transaction or deliver some secrets, for example. And because it's in the voice of the CEO, this is more convincing. This is an attack that is harder to spot. In the end, the attacker gets the secrets or the financial gain or whatever they aim to achieve from the financial department, for example. We have tried this. So basically the first scenario, we have tried it out, how well it works. Well, I have cloned my own voice. I have the rights to my own voice, so I'm allowed to do this. Please don't do this with my voice. But this doesn't need to be said. I think we just take, for example, my voice from this talk.
A little bit about this word. It's a little bit of a buzzword nowadays. What we mean when we use AI, we're talking about...
I think this is enough. But this is my voice. You see my natural voice, how I sound right now. And we take this and we just pay €1 to some online service.
AI itself?
No, don't stop playing right now, sorry. And we give this recording of my voice to the service, and they create a digital copy, basically, where I can then, assuming, let's say I'm the attacker also, where I can just input my voice and tell them to create a recording using my voice for whatever I say. For example, here in this scenario, I would be calling one of my customers, basically somebody with which I have interactions with, because those people know my voice, but they don't know it too well. So somebody calling, for example, would not be able to spot that this is not really my voice. Let's listen to it.
Hi, it's me, Alex. I hope I'm not catching you at a bad time. We have some problems with one of our recent projects.
So, okay, it goes on. Sounds pretty convincing. It's not quite my voice if you hear it right now at this moment, at this point in time, but it's very comparable. And the basic idea here in this scenario is to convince the customer to basically send some documents for aligning internal records or whatever. Something like this. So basically have a non-interactive conversation. But there are certainly models that are able to do this on the fly, although they are not as good as this prepared audio file which we can produce. So yeah, these are just some scenarios. Basically, in the end, the customer would send, let's say, passwords to access some testing infrastructure, something like that. These scenarios are actually happening, and as you can see from last year, and also they have also happened in as early as 2019, and also in Austria, as you can see here, Armin Wolf warning people about deepfakes and so on, with the purpose of scamming. Yeah, and if we look into the future a little bit, here's a little meme, not noticing as many AI images and also not noticing as many AI images. These models are getting better. So this is quite a problem, because you have already seen how convincing my voice was. Imagine if it gets better. It's not going to be able to be spottable, basically, just on the basis of the quality of the recording or the quality of my voice. So if it gets, it's almost flawless in my opinion, but if it gets better, even better, it will be hard to spot it just on the basis of, okay, does this sound like Alex, yes or no? And also, for example, this just happened, I think, 2 to 3 days ago. This is just one example of this, how good these models are getting, and also that new functionality is being developed actively by these big companies. Meta, maybe you have heard about it, just released a new model. It's called MovieGen, and it is able to create incredibly stunning movies, basically, so video material, and also with sound and so on, amazing features, and also to basically take a face and then create, based on just a text input, a whole video, including, I think, probably also audio. So yeah, this is really bad if you think about how these models could be abused. But this is a whole another topic. If you look even further into the future and think about how these models could basically act on their own. For example, you have probably heard about AutoGPT. This is an older project, but also you probably also have heard about what ChatGPT, OpenAI basically, is building into ChatGPT, this whole reasoning and planning. And having the model really think about the steps that it's doing and basically prompting itself, turning it into some sort of autonomous AI. The idea is here that we just give it a goal and it just goes out and does whatever it needs to achieve this goal. And now imagine this for social engineering. So basically I just give it, okay, please go out and fetch me passwords of Facebook users. And it has access to internet. It can generate all sorts of material, text, video, files. It has access to APIs to send emails. It can go into the web. It can create its own Facebook account. It has access to a telephone number and so on. And it just basically creates its own plan, goes out, fetches information, and does the whole thing, and then also takes the information and talks to victims over chat and so on. So this is the maybe not so distant future we are looking at, where AI models are just basically able to go out. We just start 1 million of them on AWS servers, and it just goes out and scams people. Yeah.
Okay, so let's take a step back. What can be done today? So how would an attacker today use the power of AI to scale up highly targeted attacks, for example, phishing attacks? So the attacker has to have a model, has to receive a model. So, and this model or service is freely available on the internet, and this model can be run either by the attacker or it can be consumed as a service from an online service. So to target the attack, the attacker would have some sort of information collection mechanism. So for example, a mechanism that can scrape Facebook for information about the victim, or figure out something from the domain of an email address or so. So any kind of information that can be gathered automatically is gathered, and this can then be fed into the model. The model then generates a phishing attack. So the model can, for example, first figure out an approach, like how would the phishing work, or how would the social engineering attack work, and then generate the attack. For example, generate an audio file, so a voice cloning audio file, create a video, create text, and so on. Also, what an attacker can do is check if the approach is convincing enough for a victim to likely fall into this trap. And for this, the attacker can also use a different AI. So for example, in AI that generates a text, like a phishing email, and in a different AI that checks if this looks like a phishing email. And if it does look like a phishing email, try again. Yeah, and then distribute the phishing attack or the social engineering attack to the victim. If you think about something like a chat attack, so for example WhatsApp or Facebook chat, then there is always a feedback. So the AI would write the victim via chat, and the victim would respond. This can then be again fed into the AI model, and the AI model can incorporate this feedback from the user and then write back to essentially fulfill the target, fulfill the goal that the attacker originally wants. So this is a more high-level point of view. We, of course, since we're techies, wanted to try something like this out. And so we created a very small proof of concept that implements something like this for phishing emails. So our approach looks something like this. We have a setup, which is just a text file that says, hey, we want to create a phishing email. We have a goal, which means we want, for example, the victim to click on a link and enter their credentials, or we want to receive their banking information or something like this, a specific goal, which is just also a text. And we have information about the target. So we have implemented that we get the target's name and the target's email address. And then we have what we call service enumerators. And this tries to figure out what the victim uses. And for this, we can use the email domain. So for example, if the victim's name is victim@example.com, we can look up example.com, see what is in the DNS zone, and we can, for example, see that the MX record directs to Microsoft Outlook, Microsoft Exchange, and with this information, we now know that the victim probably uses Outlook or Exchange. And this then results into a list of services. So this is just a list of services that we think that the victim probably uses. And then we can also find template emails on the internet. We could, for example, search for leak databases where a whole lot of emails are collected and look for legitimate emails for this service. And this is then a template email that we can also feed into the LLM. So the LLM is the large language model, the AI model that we use to generate text. Essentially, it's our private hosted ChatGPT, and we feed all this information into the LLM. We tell it, hey, we want you to create a phishing email. We want the victim to click on a link and enter their credentials. We know that the victim uses Outlook, and here is a template for a legitimate email that comes from Outlook. And the LLM then can create a phishing mail and also check against a different LLM. This is what I mentioned previously. We've also implemented a way for the LLM to ask in a new chat, hey, we've got this mail, does it look like a phishing email? And if it says, yeah, it looks like a phishing email, we regenerate again until it's sufficiently convincing for the LLM that the LLM no longer identifies it as a phishing email. And then we have the phishing email. And of course, we could also create a phishing site. So a phishing email is sent out to the user, to the victim. And when the victim clicks on the link, we would also want to have a phishing site that looks like the legitimate login site. So for example, if the phishing site requests the user to log into Outlook or into Outlook, then we want a phishing site that looks like the Outlook login. And this could also be generated automatically. And as you can see, with this approach, we just need essentially the name and the email address of the target, and everything else happens automatically. So what we end up is a phishing email that we could technically send to a victim. Okay. Then let me just show you very quickly a bit of the things that we implemented. So what we used is this, this project, text generation UI, and this is just a privately hosted ChatGPT. Essentially, we fed it a model that we also downloaded from the internet. And yeah, it's just a ChatGPT that you can run locally. And also, it is okay with generating phishing emails. ChatGPT would not be okay with generating phishing emails. But this specific model really doesn't care what we do with it. Yeah. And then we have this autofish file, where we have implemented a couple of service enumerators. So for example, DNS recon, what I mentioned, we look up the DNS name of the email address and see what, for example, which email service the victim likely uses. And then we ask the LLM first Yeah, okay, so generate the phishing email. And first figure out what is a good approach to phish this victim. We know that this victim uses, for example, Outlook and DocuSign. And yeah, so then it generates an approach. So it thinks about the approach that could be taken to phish this victim. And then we ask it, okay, so what is the subject line for the email that we want to send? Then it generates the subject line. And then we ask it to generate the CSS so that the email looks nice, which it then also generates. And then we generate the email itself. And then we put it all together until we have a complete phishing email. So I have here prepared. I think I lost the connection. Yeah, so this is how it would look like. So I would call this autofish.py with my name or with the name of the victim and the email address. So here it would be wolfgang@example.com. We want the victim to follow a link to example.com. So if the victim falls for the phishing email, the victim would be directed to example.com. And yeah, we use this DNS recon to get the information which services that the victim likely uses. In this case, it would request example.net and see that it, for example, uses Outlook. And unfortunately, I can't run it since I've lost the connection, but I have prepared a couple of examples. So I've simulated that we figured out that the victim uses DocuSign based on the domain. So there are some indications that DocuSign is used that can be retrieved from the domain. And here is the phishing email that would be generated. So yeah, it is not perfect, of course, but I think it is definitely something that does not look like automatically generated. Okay. So what can we do about it? In general, what can we do about these kind of attacks, these kind of social engineering attacks, these kind of phishing attacks? First of all, awareness and vigilance. Be aware that these attacks exist and that they will probably get better and scale even better than they do now. Good security practice as always. So if you have like two-factor authentication and all these things, it becomes harder to do something with someone's password if you just need a second factor as well, for example. So in general, all the good security practices that we always recommend always are useful to prevent these kinds of attacks. Strict processes. So if somebody from a department calls you, hey, can you transfer this money to this bank account? Don't do it. You need strict processes to make sure that these kinds of attacks are not possible. Also, not relying on AI-able authentication. So, for example, voice authentication is no longer useful because it is very easy to forge. Yeah, AI-based detection. So you could use some sort of AI to detect phishing emails, but again, this is always an arms race. So with any kind of detection mechanism, it's always an arms race. AI might help in general to detect attacks, but it can never be perfect. Yeah, and there are ideas for regulations. The only problem with regulations is attackers don't really care about regulations. So technically you're not allowed to use the voice faking service to fake someone else's voice, but you just need a credit card and I think $1 to fake a voice. So really it's not really a measure then that deters a malicious attacker. Okay, That is from us. So do we have time for questions?
Ja, vielen Dank an dieser Stelle mal an Alexander Hurbean und Wolfgang Ettlinger von Certitude Consulting. Und ich lasse euch die Mitte gerne über. Vielen Dank für diesen Überblick, welche Rolle AI in Bezug auf Social Engineering und automatisiertem Social Engineering spielen kann. Herzlichen Dank schon mal. Und deshalb jetzt an dieser Stelle wieder meine Frage. Wo ist die erste Frage? Hier sehe ich sie schon. Die Hand, da kommt das Mikrofon vorbei.
Hello, thank you for the talk. Have you considered, while this is a cool approach to generating phishing emails, like getting a bit more like a storyline and context to which might lead people to getting phished, like not only sending an email, but getting them into a dialogue and everything, and trying to make the AI, getting them to a point that to make them getting phished, but only like 5-6 dialogues later in the game,
Yeah, so definitely something we've considered also with like chat messages. So this would be in this approach, just send a message hi and then keep the conversation going maybe for days, and then in the end phish the victim. Yeah, we haven't implemented it yet, or we haven't implemented it, we don't plan to implement it. It's just a proof of concept, but essentially, yeah, of course, this can be done. You can always feedback the response to the AI, and the AI could further the attack always, yeah. Mm.
Thank you.
And it's still scalable at that point. That's the thing.
Hier hinten gibt es auch noch eine weitere Frage.
Wow, that was interesting. Thank you very much for a very interesting presentation. So my question would be, actually, I have two questions. First of all, how feasible it is to run everything you've mentioned locally, because I believe you mentioned quite a few models, starting from voice generation to LLMs. LLMs are feasible, like Olama, everyone probably knows about it. But I was just curious, can we actually run a sufficiently big model to generate believable emails? Yeah, that's my first question. And second question, if I may, like, are there any special models made for it, trained on actual phishing emails? Yeah, thanks. Just asking for a friend, right?
So the hardware requirements are quite reasonable. So we have in a server with 2 graphics cards that are a bit older, and it's really, really fast. So I think it takes 10 seconds to generate an email. So yeah, it's not really an issue. I think the way we have configured it now, it takes 12 gigabytes of VRAM, so also not very much. And your second question, are there specific models? I don't know that there are specific models. We have just used one that is uncensored, so that doesn't really care about doing something malicious. I mean, you could also always train your own model. So, yeah, if you really, really want to do this, then of course you could train your own model.
Gibt es noch weitere Fragen an dieser Stelle? Ich muss immer schauen, gegen den Scheinwerfer gar nicht so einfach. Aber ich glaube, jetzt sind wirklich alle Fragen beantwortet. Falls noch welche auftauchen, ihr seid noch da. Natürlich auch jederzeit offen für das persönliche Gespräch. Und wir sagen hier schon mal vielen Dank an Alexander Hurbean und Wolfgang Ettlinger. Okay.